The center of every bad habit you have is a neurological pattern with three distinct parts. First, you have a trigger that signals your brain to go into autopilot mode, much like a notification you get on your phone. Beyond scrolling through social media and biting your nails, one of the worst habits you can have is to habitually enter a state in which you're unfocused and unproductive. A loss of productivity can result in job loss, missing out on sales targets, or failing to achieve a goal that you've been putting on the back burner because you're habitually distracted. Thankfully, there's an easy 3-step secret to breaking this and other bad habits with biohacking to become unstoppable. I even have a free quiz for you that will help you pinpoint where you need to focus first. But before we get to that, you must understand that at the center of every bad habit you have is a neurological pattern with three distinct parts. First, you have a trigger that signals your brain to go into autopilot mode, much like a notification you get on your phone. Second is the habit itself or the behavior. This could be putting off tasks, avoiding making important phone calls, refreshing email, or looking at your phone the second you wake up. Then there's 3, the reward, which comes in the form of a dopamine spike. And here's where you need to pay close attention. A Johns Hopkins study found that when people see something associated with a past reward, their brain flushes with dopamine. Which is why even if you have a bad habit like putting off tasks and it's causing you pain, your brain still expects a reward from it due to past experiences and strong neural connections that were formed at that time. Concentration occurs when the brain's prefrontal cortex is awash with dopamine, which is why it's no accident that you concentrate best when you're really engaged in something, like learning a new skill, listening to music, scrolling through social media, or doing something that you love. In researching my book Unstoppable, I set out to find a way to form new behaviors and break old patterns through biohacking your brain. The habit that I had to break was an unfocused and unproductive state, which I wanted to replace with the habit of being powerfully productive. And this is critical because at times in our lives, we have things we have to do to get ahead, but we don't necessarily want to do them. Avoiding what you've got to do is a habit that you must break. There's a cue, which could be a task or a deadline, a habit like avoiding that task and looking at social media instead, and a reward, which is the relief of not having to do that hard work. And here's where you need to listen closely. If your reward is avoiding something you don't want to do, but must, and replacing it with something like social media or a refreshing email, you're training your neural pathways to sabotage your life. You're training your brain to go into an autopilot mode that's ineffective and inefficient, which is a reward itself because when the brain enters autopilot mode, like mindless scrolling or driving a car, it expends less energy than doing the activity you've been putting off. You need to break the loop, and it's easier to do than what you might think, and combined with a free quiz, it'll be a walk in the park. To do this, you must reverse engineer it so the dopamine reward comes from doing something you've been putting off instead of the act of avoiding it, because when your focus flounders, your dopamine drops. The first step is to visualize your successful completion of the task that you're putting off. Mentally rehearse its completion. See yourself with a sense of relief that it's completed and you've freed up spare time. You feel happy and excited that you've accomplished something meaningful. Increase those feelings to a 10 out of 10. The single act of visualizing your successful outcome will flush your brain with dopamine. So when it comes to doing the task itself, your brain will not only act on autopilot mode because it's been there and done it before, it will also do it in anticipation of a dopamine reward. You're also establishing new neural pathways to a better outcome. And if you need help with this activity, I've got downloadable audio programs that will step you through how to do it in under 10 minutes. Second is to create a cue to a powerfully productive state. For example, in my early 20s, I started writing my first book on an island in Thailand. I was listening to the soundtrack from the movie The Beach. When I got back to Australia, because I had a powerful association with that music and being in a relaxed yet focused and creative state, I would automatically induce my brain's autopilot mode to focus whenever I played it. Even now, over 15 years later, when I put that soundtrack on, it sends a cue to my brain that it's writing time. Next time you're in a focused and productive state, I want you to hit play on an album that you love but won't distract you from your work. Listen to the same album on repeat. After a few weeks, you'll automatically cue your brain to go into autopilot mode to focus. The next is an unusual one. It's to introduce a specific natural nootropic into your routine. When I wrote my now bestseller Unstoppable, one nootropic that I researched for the book and ended up taking daily while I was writing it was L-theanine. It's naturally found in black tea. I would take it in supplement form 30 minutes before I had to sit down and write for hours at length, distraction-free, because L-theanine produces alpha brainwaves within 30 minutes of consumption. Alpha is where you're in a relaxed yet alert state and hours of work feels like minutes. But it also does something else incredibly important. L-theanine can increase certain neurotransmitters in your brain, including dopamine. Multiple studies have shown that L-theanine increases dopamine production, thus causing an antidepressant effect and enhancing cognitive function. I call this three-step approach habit stacking, and we're tackling breaking a bad habit from 3 angles. 1. Psychologically, by mentally rehearsing the completion of your task to associate it with a reward. 2. Giving it a cue to perform by deploying music to signal autopilot mode. And 3, biologically, by not only inducing alpha brainwaves, but increasing dopamine through the use of L-theanine, which is time with the task that you've been putting off. This is one of the most powerful ways to break a bad habit because we're using the same neurological patterns in which our habit was created to break it and form new ones. A trigger, a cue, and a reward. But where most people get stuck when breaking the habit of putting off work, they fail to recognize that it isn't just the habit itself that's the problem. It's ensuring your brain is performing at its absolute best. If you suffer from brain fog, fatigue, or anxiety, breaking a bad habit will become exhaustively harder. Which is why I put a link to a free quiz below that will help you to pinpoint other key areas you need to focus on to help you to become unstoppable. Click the link now and remember, you have what it takes to become a peak performer. You just have to learn how to unlock your brain's capacity to achieve. That's the real secret to success.